Martin Show is Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows. Tonight we'll have David Whitley from the Gainesville Sun and his partner in crime, Kevin Brockaway. Kevin was in Starkville this past weekend, and we'll talk about what's next for the Gators in this bye week and all things Gators and where the Gators go from for the rest of the season after a solid SEC win, their first in quite some time. All tonight on the Buddy Martin Show. Hit that like and subscribe button.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Buddy Martin Show. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows. Brendan Martin signing in, as well as Mr. David Whitley from the Gainesville Sun. A little later, we'll be joined by Kevin Brockaway from the Gainesville Sun as well, his partner in crime. Kevin was in Starkville for the Gators' solid win against Mississippi State, or depending on how you look at it, solid or not. And we'll discuss basically what's going on during this bye week, what the Gators may be able to do to improve, and what the forecast looks for the games later in the season and going forward. So with that, we welcome in David Whitley from the Gainesville Sun, as well as our EP, Brendan Martin. How you guys doing?
Very well. How are you tonight? I see you're at Auburn tonight at a softball game, and everybody seems to be frozen there.
Well, we got to win this weekend, from the Gators, but I need to be reminded of happier times and kind of what success looks like. So, that was a nice backdrop. If you've never been to Auburn, Alabama, it's definitely worth the trip. One of my favorite southern towns, definitely college towns. And I was on hand to see the Florida Gators take home the SEC tournament last spring. So it was good. It was good. We we got a big crowd here. A lot of Gator fans: Wally Gator, Dan Bond, Toby Permeter, Pauline Gross. Quite a few of our regulars here, and let's dive into it. So, what'd you think this weekend, Mr. Whitley?
Hey, it was a win. That beats a loss.
Ha!
It's bye week, but had they lost, it would have been the bye week for Billy, I think.
Okay.
So that drama will continue. The saga lives to fight another day. That will be next week. UCF will have I'm sure we have plenty to talk about that game next week. And this week they took a couple of days off. Reported back today, trying to get back into it, and somehow in the next 13 days find a defense.
Right.
I don't know if God created the heavens and the earth in 7 days. I think he would have needed more than that to find a defense for Florida, though, because what's creating heavens when you got to find guys who can tackle? It's impossible. Apparently,
right.
They don't exist in the Gator cosmos at this point.
What's funny is I was at the game and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, if Mississippi State just decides they want to run the football and get old school with it. And it's not the fact that the Gators can't necessarily tackle. It's they are incapable of stopping the mosh pit, which is 5 to 6 offensive linemen or a tight end, from moving them. So it's like, yes, eventually they make a tackle, but it's 5-6 yards down the field. I mean, it is amazing how I don't want to use the term soft because, I don't like that. And those guys work hard. but their inability to stand up to a physical run game that comes right at them. I mean, it's shocking with some of the people they should have in place. I mean, with Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks, and I mean, you got a 400-pound guy that's getting moved like he's a 280-pound lineman. I mean, it's like he should be playing at Samford the way that he's getting moved around. And I was just shocked, and it's consistently every week, and it was like almost like Mississippi State got lost in the sauce and just couldn't stick with that run game. It's like it's not a part of Jeff Levy's system. So
Yeah, I mean,
eventually,
it's not like they weren't
even though
burning
they're
it up, right? I mean, it was like
right,
125th best running offense or something, even
yeah. But I
higher
mean,
than
but but
I
if
mean,
you
they
look at the
just
game,
sucked rolling in, and the Gators
right.
couldn't stop. Like they couldn't stop the suck.
Right. Well, if you look at right, they weren't very good at running the football. They only had 66 yards rushing against Toledo, but like at some point in time, it really looked like they were like, well, we'll just run the ball the rest of the game. And then all of a sudden they had to throw a bubble or they had to spill something out to the edge, and that's when Florida was actually able to get a tackle for loss or something like that and kind of move in that direction. But Mr. Whitley, I guess to kind of put a spin on it, or not a spin, but kind of evaluate it fully, did you see anything that looked like any type of improvement from this football team, whether it be offensively, defensively? I mean, I thought obviously the numbers don't lie. Graham Mertz played extremely well, had some nice throws, really read the defense pre-snap. But did you see anything that you thought, hey, that it shows an improvement of any kind?
Defensively, I didn't have an electron microscope, that's what it would have taken to find something positive on defense that seemed to improve. Yeah, offense, I think there's good stuff to take away from. You can start with the young guys like Aiden Mizell. He showed out. You've been hearing since he got on campus. This guy's got skill, got speed, but other skills, and he's been injured a lot. And last year, he had guys in front of him, and there's other guys there, but he had his chance, and you can see that he's got a lot of. I mean, especially with Trey Wilson out, he picked it up. I mean, he ended up with only I think 4 catches for not many yards, but it's the plays that like the one play that everybody's been buzzing about the bad call with Montrell with the crackback block, which
definitely bad call.
Cracked him, but it wasn't in his back. That was a bad call.
Right, really bad call.
Yeah, but I mean, you could just see that Mizell's good, and you saw Trayan Webb ran well, Jaden Ball, those kids look sharp, and of course, I was really impressed again with Lagway because I think I was like everybody else. Graham Mertz was he was looking like good Archie Manning back in the day. He was just killing it. But Billy said no, we're gonna stick to our plan. And so after the third possession, he put the kid in, and I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. We're gonna see that. But I mean, he showed more poise. I mean, because he made some big play. One of the bigger plays, and they were like third and I forgot what it was on their own, deep in their own territory, and he ran for like 12 yards, got the first down. And and he directed them to 2 90-yard plus drives.
Right.
And I think he showed. I think that we got way too high after the Samford game and a little bit too low after the A&M game. He's somewhere in there. I mean, he is obviously he's the future, but he's also good enough to where he plays now. And for all the quarterback controversies, so to speak, it's a good problem to have because I don't think in the team dynamic that it is a problem, because I think that they don't just say the right things. Yeah, I'm happy for this other guy doing well, blah blah blah. I think they really mean it. And,
absolutely. I mean,
Mertz, especially has been very very mature and deserves kudos for the way he's handled this whole thing. A guy, senior coming back, trying to impress pros and all that. But I mean, he has really subverted that. And because also he knows that he's still gonna get his shot. I mean, and he is Billy's guy. And so, unless he goes out there and totally screws up, which will be on him, he's going to still get his reps. But I mean, he's doing all he can to help the kid come along, and the kid's coming along.
Right. Brendan, you had something to add?
No, I just think Graham Mertz is like he's face guy, man. He's sexy. He's always sexy when it's like time to be sexy, like. But it's just I don't know. He's just not. Like when you see DJ going in and you go in, and I call him DJ because we're tight. Uh, uh, he gives me a little shout out when he goes in. It's like, something. No, but I think it's I think it's good that they have. Look, I think it eases the pain that Graham's got a cool close to $1 million coming to the bank. I would be very, very cordial as well. I think it's a good situation in that sense. And but I just think that this game is much like these games from last year. The first half of Tennessee, or all these promised, like hopes and dreams. Like I'm not, like it's all done now, right? It's like we do the bye week, rest up because you're just gonna your ass is gonna be handed to you. Do you guys know anything about? Have you heard anything? Is there? Because I get a lot of people asking about, is there anything going to happen in the bye week to Billy? Is there any rumbling?
No.
So and so's
No.
in town. So and so's
No.
here. All that stuff.
And I'm going to address that in a couple ways, but I want to go back, and I do want to note this because I think we need to be responsible in highlighting what is true. And I know somebody that had a really long discussion with the Lagway family at the game or after the game, and they couldn't be more glowing about what Graham Mertz has done for their son. And when we talk about team sports, and we've all played sports and been parts of teams, I mean, we're kind of part of a team now where we help each other out. I think that says something. And for all Billy's talk about character and things like that, quarterback is the one position where, particularly in a situation like this, you can kind of, it can test your character. And I think in this particular situation, we have to applaud Graham Mertz, not just for continue to play fairly well, but also being what you would want. Whether Graham Mertz was out playing DJ Lagway or not, I think it's something to be said for this time next year. If we're having a conversation about how great DJ Lagway is, I think we're going to be applauding, Graham Mertz for kind of putting DJ Lagway in a position to be handed the keys to the kingdom. And I think that that's something that, from, the Lagway family seems to be all bought in on the University of Florida. And obviously that's been made better because of Graham Mertz, So, I mean,
Is
I
it
think
the king to the kingdom, or is it like the king to the pinto? Because it's like
no. It's from what I understand.
I just don't understand that. It's like,
well, but you got to think about it this way. No matter who the head coach is at the University of Florida, being the quarterback at the University of Florida, in my opinion, and y'all could correct me if I'm wrong, is the keys to the kingdom.
Used to be.
Well,
oh no, if you do, I mean, if you're successful, I mean, hey, how did all these guys get into the insurance business and have $1 million? It's Wayne Peace Insurance. You open it up, people will answer that call. I mean, it's, unless you just have get arrested for something, you're the QB at Florida and a successful one, then you're if you just take care of your business, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, that was back in the day where guys weren't making $900,000 a year playing football in college.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
So and people who sort of chagrin about Mertz, said, where would this team be without him? I mean, if Lagway was starting these games, I mean, he wasn't ready to be the starter. I think we saw that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but I mean, the way Mertz coming back was the best thing that ever happened to DJ Lagway.
Right.
Yeah.
And this
absolutely.
Right.
No
yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, I think, but isn't it a good thing? It's a win-win, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, I think they both get along about it. And look, and hats off to the guys for having a good attitude about it. I mean,
right. Oh yeah, no doubt. Now, with like you said, asking about there is nothing, and maybe this is something I want to ask about, but I'll answer it this way. From what I understand, nothing is going to happen during this bye week, and I mean literally nothing. And what I mean by that is, there's only one media availability for Billy Napier, and that's tomorrow, right? I understand the SEC
Yep.
teleconference. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
teleconference. Yeah.
So I want to ask, nothing is going on. So all the people that think something is going on, that's a no. But I want to ask a question and I want to make a statement. So, Mr. Whitley, is that normal for most schools during the bye week that their coach doesn't come out and really speak to the press as a whole and only handles the teleconference? Do you know that to be true? I've kind of found that odd, but I mean, in there's two things in light of the situation right now, number one, but then it almost seems very Coach Napier like if that's not true of other coaches in the conference. Do you know if that they make themselves
I
available?
can't speak conference wide. I know that that's the way it's been here since Billy's been here. And if
Okay.
I was here for the last year of Mullen, I think that was the case where, I mean, really, he spoke after the game Saturday. And usually if it's a normal week, he has a availability Monday, Wednesday,
Right.
and Wednesday night. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really nothing new to say come Monday because nothing had happened. They flew home,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
really tomorrow he will rehash. But it's a little early to be. All right, tell me about UCF. We got all next week to talk about UCF. So it's not. No, I mean, if somebody wants to read into that he's only talking, once he's avoiding people. Well, no, I mean, when he was riding high, it was the same situation.
Okay.
As far as that goes, and
Right.
I mean, and really, I don't think as one of the guys who's there every time, trying to ask questions, I had nothing new to ask Monday that he hadn't talked about Saturday.
Right.
I mean, nothing had happened.
Right.
So nobody was saying, "Gosh, Billy's trying to duck us."
What's that now?
And nobody was saying he's trying to duck us.
Right. So with that said, there's been a lot of questions about, okay, is this the bye week where they bring in, they're going to be bringing in all these people? And, I was actually bombarded with a couple calls talking about, did Charlie Strong come in, and was Mark Pantoni in from Columbus, from Ohio State? He's like their GM. Was Ryan Stamper here? What are Steve and Coach Spurrier and Urban? And all I can say is this: that obviously both Urban Meyer and Coach Spurrier love the University of Florida. Brendan, you know that, and would do anything they could to help the school. So as much as Urban has been hot and cold with certain people at the university, he still loves Florida and would do anything to help them. I can say I spoke with a member of Ohio State staff. Mark Pantoni has not left Columbus except for the explicit uh, reason of traveling with Ohio State. So he had never came here. And Charlie Strong, nowhere to be found. There was a meeting supposedly at Spurrier's, those kind of things. I mean, it just, but it's kind of cool because that's bi-week talk sometimes. So it's good to talk about it. But I had somebody really, I mean, they were arguing with me. And I said, okay, if I call somebody that's on Ohio State staff and ask them, will you go with it then? And even to that point, they were like, well, but this guy on this site, he always knows what. And I'm just like, we got to deal in reality. And the reality is we're in a bye week. Nothing's going to happen other than hopefully, like you said, the good Lord comes down and finds some run defense, because Lord knows they're going to need it in about a week, and they get better. I think the team is starting to find themselves a little bit offensively, maybe, but until they stop somebody, it's just going to be the same thing. And this bye week, I mean, I guess the coolest thing about the bye week is I'm actually going to go to the UCF Colorado game on Saturday and see what we're up against, I guess.
Hey, I'm going to be there too.
Gonna see some coach.
Coach
run.
I'm going too. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. But
is this guy going down here? Is Mr. Brockway going to be in the house?
No. He's going to enjoy his open week. He's got bigger. He's got better plans than that.
He was traveling. He was traveling hard on Saturday. I told him. I said. He said, "You sitting next to me in the press box." I said, "Nah, I got to go down. I got to hear the noise and see what's going on." But We welcome in Kevin Brockaway from the Gainesville Sun. How you doing, sir?
Oh, it's good to see you, David, again, as always. And good to
Yeah.
see you, Lauren and Brennan. And
What's going on? How I can?
my plan was to go up and see the Mets and Braves. Like the weather's going to agree with me there with the hurricane. So Mets right now are down 5-1. So it's kind of like the Florida Georgia thing with the Mets and the Braves. The Mets can't Braves, so maybe it's better.
So you were in Starkville. I mean, you were there live. I mean, what did you see? I mean, we talked about. Did we see anything that moved the needle for us? Anything that you can kind of hang your hat on that this thing might at least improve? You know, I mean, what did you see when you were sitting there in Starkville? I mean, based on, I mean, what did you think about Mississippi State? Did they beat a team that was kind of on the come up and just kind of, you know, maybe just stub their toe against Toledo, or did they basically, kind of just muddle enough through this game to get the win?
Well, I think if you're a Gator fan, the one thing you have to be encouraged about is the passing game and the fact that Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway both threw the ball exceptionally well, and they got the big plays. Remember last year, that was the big bugaboo, right? They couldn't get the plays of 20 or 30 yards. Well, they're getting them, and Aiden, even without Trey Wilson, right? Aiden Mizell showed something, certainly in his stead. Marcus Burke, the two transfer receivers, DK and Elijah Badger, look really good. And Graham Mertz was on point, and he was obviously a little shaky the first week, had the concussion, but he looks like he's kind of rounding into form and being the quarterback that maybe some people thought he was going to be to start the season, with his accuracy. 19 of 21, 12 of 15 the last game. So, I mean, if you add that up, that's an incredible completion percentage on par with what he was doing last year. So, I mean, that's the encouraging thing, but the defense obviously still needs a lot of work. Somebody runs up the gut too. And that's what I asked, Billy about, post, just do you reassess the tackles? I mean, it seems like Ron Roberts has this love affair with Des Watson, and I just don't see it. He had one tackle. Now, Cam Jackson played particularly well, but still, you got to, you have to have guys in there. I know they were without Slackman, they were without Mekhi Burrow, and maybe getting those two guys back will help. But UCF, I mean, that's, going to be tall order because they're one of the best, running football teams in all of college football. And you got to shore that up. You got to just figure out a way to do that. Otherwise, UCF is going to control the clock, and it could be like a Texas A&M situation where you don't even have the ball, for much in the first half because they're just going to keep running it on you.
Mm-hmm. And I think they will stick to it, Mr. Whitley, as far as sticking to it, not going away from it. Like we said, we think Mississippi State may have got away from it a little too soon, if you know what I mean. I mean, they really didn't stop Florida, so that hurt them as well. But, when you look at this, I mean, what do you got? I mean, what is missing? What is, because, I mean, when you look at it really, I mean, as much as we all, I think, have had our say about the way Coach Napier has done things, they really are about 2 or 3 pieces away from being a decent football team. But it's just those things are missing. And I've always thought of it to the fact, well, they don't practice hard enough. And to me, you breed physicality Monday through Thursday. I call it, you got to be a savage defense. We're not even close to that. What do you think, Mr. Whitley? I mean, have you heard? I mean, are we, whatever we hear, is it the pieces, or, I mean, what is the big miss?
On defense, I think they're missing players and coaching.
Okay.
But no, more specifically, yeah. Billy has said, we got to reassess and maybe get some new guys, other guys in there. The problem is that, they don't have those guys. I mean, if they had those, they would have been starting to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he figures, well, put in younger guys, figuring they can't do any worse and at least get some experience and improve. But Slackman's good, but he's not going to personally turn that defense, the defensive line into the fearsome foursome.
No.
And I think a bigger issue is just the coaching. And I think Ron Roberts. I mean, I think he's a proven he's a good coach and he knows what he's doing, but what he's saying is not clicking here. I think the guys are confused. And who it was after it was saying as much that they're just having communication problems. I think these guys are over programmed, and they just a lot of football and all good sports is a game of reaction and not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think these guys, they're just thinking too much. And they're caught out of position. And you combine that with the fact that they're getting fit because in the trenches is not so much it's not so much the coaching is, are you strong enough? Are you tough enough? Are you big enough? Are you it's
right.
It's not I'm out of position. No, you start in the right position. You just got to execute. And they can't control the line of scrimmage, and that puts the pressure on all the other guys. And with I guess Ron Roberts went up to the press box this past week,
mm-hmm.
and that it didn't matter.
Right.
I don't think they could. He might as well be sitting in my lap here, calling
right.
plays because and they just got to. I don't know if it's simplifying or what, but obviously what he's preaching is not taken with these guys.
Right. Well, Kevin, I was told, I got a good friend, Eric Gillespie. I'm gonna give him a shout out. He's one of the best defensive coaches I've been around. Great secondary guy, and he always used to say the term, you don't practice defense, you play defense. And that may speak to some of the communication is instead of allowing these guys to just run and go hit something, see ball, hit ball. I mean, is it the system is too complicated, or because we've had two different defensive back coaches, two different D-line coaches, we've got a 14-year NFL vet, well, really two linebacker coaches, 14-year NFL vet, coaching former Gator, coaching the edge guys. I mean, I just can't believe that they can't at least get in the right gap and defend themselves, so to speak.
Well, when you look at the missed tackles or the broken tackles, to me that's physicality, it's fundamentals. Also, that's something that we heard that they were really working a lot on tackling, but it's not really showing on the field. And I think too in I guess Ron Roberts has maybe alluded to some people. It was on the ESPN broadcast something about maybe guys not trusting too, and some guys freelancing and getting out of position because they want to make plays. So I think there's a line with that. When you're implementing a scheme, it's kind of like this creeper defense. It's an interesting defense. Rex Ryan ran it obviously really well with the New York Jets. Dave Aranda had success with it at LSU, but then of course goes to Baylor and they're struggling right now. The simulated pressures, but I still think at times it doesn't seem like the disguise blitzes very well. It seems like that they're very obvious when they bring a secondary guy or they bring a linebacker or someone off the edge. It just doesn't seem like it just doesn't seem like it's disguised very well to me, and I think that's a big issue. And I think we saw it, particularly against Texas A&M too. They were very easy. It's very easy to find the hot receiver when you bring that kind of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and you alluded to it. It's almost like, and maybe we talk about LSU and a guy like Grant Delpit that could do a lot of things really well in Dave Aranda's defense, and then even Patrick Toney. When you looked at even Patrick Toney and you look at the Louisiana tape, when they slanted, everybody slanted to the right gap. And the linebackers, it's almost like you said, everybody has to be on the same page. Because the one thing with this creeper defense, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then you can really get exposed. And what people don't realize is, and I wrote an article about this when those guys first got here, is it really amounts to basically what's a 4 or 5 man pressure. You just disguise basically who's coming. So you don't, you're not bringing a lot of 6, 7 man pressures. You're not playing a lot of zero coverage. It is a lot of too high and some of that stuff, but you have to identify what the offense is trying to do to you, and that's really how you make the play. So it kind of goes back to a lot of the advanced analytics and things like that I think Florida is trying to incorporate. But I mean, we could sit here all day and talk about Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway, but ultimately, this football team is going to go as far as this defense takes it. I mean, and
Yeah,
that
and it's hard to find many rays of hope when it comes to that.
right,
They've been, as Kevin said, the tackling. I remember we all did stories on it in the spring, how they were concentrating so much on tackling,
right,
so it's not like they're aware of these problems, and not that they haven't worked on them, but they just get out there on Saturday, and it's been there, not done that, over and over again, and you just scratch your head and go, what does it take?
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean it's coaches, it's players, it's all that, and it's hard to just imagine that. I mean, there's no magic wand out there that's going to turn this thing around. And you see, if they are going to win these games, they're going to have to win shootouts.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to think of, the last game where they really looked halfway decent on defense was against Florida State, which was playing, backup QB.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but beyond that, I am, Kevin, can you recall the last time they had an impressive defensive performance? I mean, it had to be before you left for Indiana.
Well, Utah. I mean, really, the first game against Utah, would that be?
Tennessee at the Swamp was an impressive defensive game.
Okay.
Yeah. They held, they held the 16. I mean, that wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Game against South Carolina first year when they got a bunch of turnovers and they shut down South Carolina in the Swamp. They've had a few, but yeah, a very farm team. But they've had so many clunkers, like
right.
Kentucky, where they let them run all over them. The Arkansas game last year, one where they just, obviously LSU last year, but now we're seeing what Shane Daniels did last night, and Malik Neighbors did over the weekend. I mean, that was a pretty offense that Brian Kelly had last year. So maybe there's no shame in giving up 50 against them, but when you give up, in the 30s against Arkansas and Kentucky, two teams last year that were somewhat offensively challenged, yeah, then that's, like I said, a problem. And even Mississippi State giving up 28 to them. And really, they almost gave up 35. I mean, they were at the goal line at the very end of the game. Florida had to make another goal line stand. I will say one kid who showed a little something, against Mississippi State was Trequezie Bridges. I thought he played very well. 10 tackles and a forced fumble, did some good things. And Pup Howard and on a whole, I think they struggle a little bit in the transfer portal evaluating defensive guys, but I do think Bridges and Pup Howard have been pretty good this year in terms of guys that have come over from the portal and done some good things.
All right. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, and we gotta before we go, we need to talk about a couple of our sponsors. Obviously, Meldon Law, the only official law firm of the Florida Gators. Meldon Law, we won't back down, and it's been, and this is what you talk about being a family of Gators. They offer different tickets. Follow Meldon Law on Instagram and Facebook. You can win tickets to games. They have a lot of different experiences, concerts, things like that. I've actually won a few actually, and just really buying into the whole Florida experience, helping the band out so the band could get their equipment to different places and things like that. So really appreciate Meldon Law for their sponsorship of the show, and Meldon Law, we won't back down. And then we also have Titan MRI, Gainesville and Lake City's newest MRI facility. And, we talked about it many times. They have the large MRI rooms with the music. If you're claustrophobic, make you really comfortable. If you don't have insurance, no worries. You can still go get your ailments looked at and things like that. So Titan MRI serving Gainesville, Lake City, and surrounding areas. And we really appreciate their sponsorship. So I want to engage some of our listeners here because I think this is something we haven't talked about, and maybe just because maybe we see the whole picture, but I want to get you guys opinions on this because I've heard this from a couple people now, and even somebody I was at the game with. Is Florida hurting themselves with Montrell Johnson? Now I'm gonna go first because I say no, and the only reason I say because when it comes to being the most complete back And if you look at some of the passing plays, at least particularly on Saturday, he was stepping up, stoning some dudes. I mean, I know he had the fumble, but I think where he's most valuable is because of the pass protections and things like that. As a runner, will Trayon Webb and maybe Jaden Bobb be more talented? But as somebody that you can count on to be the complete back for Florida, I think the best bet is Montrell Johnson as a starter. Now, obviously, they're playing 2 to 3 black backs, which is Jabbar Jalouk and Billy's thing. I mean, they've done that since their days in Louisiana, and even with guys like Leonard Fournette, Jalouk played other guys even when he was at LSU. So, I mean, is Montrell Johnson even an issue, or is it something that they could move? Because I don't think he's hurting them whatsoever. I mean, he gets the tough yards and things like that. But I mean, I want to get you guys' opinion on because it's starting to become a theme, not as much as the DJ Lagway, Graham Mertz, but people are starting to, I mean, kind of use Montrell Johnson not as a scapegoat, but as one of those subjects that's out there that I really think is a non-starter.
Kevin, take it.
Well, it's interesting because you remember the Miami game and him coming off the scope, and he looked pretty good going down the sideline, that 71-yard run. But I'm wondering the wear and tear since. He looks like he's lost a little burst. I mean, he certainly did in the Mississippi State game. But that being said, like you said, just a veteran experience. I mean, I think he's your guy. Yeah, he had a fumble. But I like how they're using the running backs just in general, getting Trayon in there. Jacoby Jackson is another guy who, he had a touchdown run. He's another guy, too. So I think you've got 4 different guys really used during the course of the game and be fine there. And Trayon looks like he's progressing. And Trayon is another guy who's really good in pass protection also. He blocks really well. I mean, he's a guy you can trust in pass protection. And Jaden Baugh, he had that fumble in the Sanford game, but he looked really good against Mississippi State when he came in the fourth quarter. So I think it's good to have those fresh backs. If you have a lead and you want to close out the game, you could probably go to different guys. But I do think you still owe it to Montrell, particularly for him coming back to kind of be the bell cow. And he still had the most carries. He had 15 carries. And that quote unquote crackback block as well, which was a questionable call. If that sprung myself free for what would have been a long touchdown. Like you said, yeah, he does the little things, and he's gonna be physical and put his body out there for his teammates as well. I think he's first and foremost he's a leader and he's a good teammate, and I think sets a pretty good example for the rest of the guys out there.
Yeah, I don't see Montrell as being an issue. I mean, if you were to list the issues that this team has, you'd be way down the list. And you got to remember, he's also running behind not the greatest offensive line. I mean, all these guys are doing it, but it's not it's not the Great Wall of Florida who's clearing the path for him there. And so I don't think it's an issue. I mean, it's one of those things that may it makes good conversation or good argument. I don't even think it makes a good argument because I don't know what the argument is. Yeah, I mean, no, he's not Adrian Peterson, but
right.
But he's done enough to earn his carries and his job there.
Right.
Interesting. I think with the Mississippi State game, I'm wondering if this is going to be, and they probably did have a physical advantage, but I'm wondering if this is going to be a confidence boost for the offensive line a little bit. I mean, if you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, I mean, Slaughter is rated one of the best centers in college football, and also the offensive line.
I was noticing that, and I also noticed that, through the first 4 games, Graham Mertz is one of the lowest rated guys there, and I think they're over analyticaling this stuff,
right?
Because some of these guys are like, he's highly rated, and this guy's down there, like,
right. Well, and it goes to show Slaughter. It goes to say what we said about the defense. Slaughter and Barber could be doing their job, but they play 4 feet from each other, 6 feet from each other. So you can have, you have a center doing his job, left tackle doing his job, and then the other 3, and it kind of speaks to what we said about the defense. If all 5 guys are making it happen, then, it could be. I mean, I think Slaughter and Barber both will play on Sundays. I've been a pretty good somebody bet me a bottle of bourbon that Trey Dean wouldn't play on Sundays, and he goes and wins a Super Bowl ring his first year. Which so that even though I don't drink, if I'm gonna have it would be bourbon. So I didn't drink it. It's just sitting there. But it's the fact that like we said, you got these guys. I mean, you got guys like I mean I think that Jordan Castell will probably play on Sundays. Jason Marshall's going to play on Sundays. Devin Moore, even though he gave up a touchdown, he's going to play on. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys are going to, guys get beat, but it's got to be the whole collective group
Yeah.
together.
That was a perfect throw.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
That beat Devin
Absolutely.
Moore and a great
Absolutely.
catch as well.
Absolutely.
It
Right.
was
Absolutely.
it was right there. So
Right.
David, you know what I say about Pro Football Focus, by the way? It's a racket that Chris Collinsworth created for his son, basically a cottage industry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, those guys are out of Northern Kentucky, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, I probably get in trouble for saying this. That group down there, Highlands and all that, they think they invented football. So I mean, you might know Kevin. That's not far from Indiana, but that Highlands, that town, they think they invented football. So yeah, I can attest to that. So yeah, that's kind of who was the sportscaster that he was a big pro football focused guy. He was always quoting. Was that Skip Bayless or somebody who was always quoting Pro Football Focus?
But it is funny how that has taken on. Like it's the gospel. If it's in Pro Football Focus, it must be right.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
I mean, it is a useful tool to some extent, but to take it as, oh yeah, obviously Graham Mertz sucks because he's 55.8 through, he should be third team.
Right.
There's a lot more to it than just that. You got it. I mean, anybody who's seen it would go, "What are these guys watching the same game?"
Right. Yeah, it's wild. But so it's the off week, so let's play along. So I had the privilege when I left Starkville. I actually moseyed on up the road a little bit, about an hour and a half to Oxford, Mississippi. And one thing I can say is, if you're starving, by the time you get there and spend about 15 minutes, you won't be starving anymore because tons of food in the Grove. So everybody's going to make the trip next year to Oxford. It's worth it. Plenty of food. But what you find yourself doing is having conversations with people that are pretty much in the know of what's going on at Ole Miss, and just the initial picture that I got. I don't think Lane Kiffin is and should go anywhere because it's a great setup. I mean, he's got the best setup. I mean, he's got it made there, and they've got the NIL thing taken care of, and all of those things. But I guess if we play along and we say, okay, Lane Kiffin really wants to be the head coach of Florida, and no matter what happens, he's going to be at Florida. What do you guys think about that? And is that what is going to be so outside of having a phenomenal offense? And I can say from somebody who saw them in person, they're good on defense. They're not a savage defense. They've got a few guys that can run around, play good football. They got some safeties. I can't remember the kid's name, transfer from Arkansas, number 11. He's sideline to sideline, but Princely is still Princely. I mean, he is. I mean, it was it was a couple minuses for Princely, but what is going to make it? What is going to be the difference with? Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, what would be the difference with Lane Kiffin? What is the difference?
Well, number one, I think he's a big personality. You know what I mean, which would be good for the box office. And number two, I mean, listen, I know people, like I saw Shane saying, like, offense hasn't necessarily been the problem. I mean, Billy Napier's offenses have been ranked 6 or 7 in the SEC pretty much consistently during his time here. Lane's has been ranked in the top 3 every year since he's been in Ole Miss. So he's a guy that can outscore his defense. He can win games. I mean, you saw that LSU game last year. I mean, he can win games 52-49. Which I think the fans would love here, and I mean, I think he's that good of an offensive coach where he's just such an innovative offensive mind that he would be able to do that. So I think that's why so many fans clamor for him because he would be a throwback, and just his personality is colorful, and he has fun on social media, and it would be a throwback to the '90s a little bit, I think, if you brought him in here. But like you said, very good setup at Ole Miss, and making $9 million a year. I mean, I was told by someone they think you'd have to pay him 12 to come here. And that would be a tall order, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they're going to have to get a big name, a name brand out there, whether it's Lane or James Franklin or Lincoln Riley or fill in the blank, because they've gone up and comer the last few times and it hasn't panned out. So and Lane, as Kevin said, he just has the pizzazz, and people would immediately go, oh, wow, great. And I think they're ready to write the big check, because it's going to take a big check for any of these guys. All these guys are making $9 to $10 million that they're going to be targeting. And when you hear it, you just wish, God, Mom, why didn't you make me become a football coach? Well, of course, Lauren, you were, but you got into a more lucrative line of work.
Yeah.
So, we can understand that. But I'm not surprised, that up in Oxford they're feeling good. They should feel good, because he does. As you said, this isn't your father's Ole Miss, to where you're never going to win big in Oxford just because it's Mississippi and there's not enough talent there to recruit. I mean, there's some, but Alabama, LSU come and get play. Everybody gets players there, and it's still you're playing in a 50, 60,000 seats back in the old days, and there were obviously it was there were bigger jobs out there, and Florida is it's usually, I think a lot of people sort of mix the power of UF and the just how big it is in the state and the influence that it has. And I mean, that's appealing, but he's the king of Mississippi, and and you've heard in the old rumor mill that, oh yeah, he would die to come here. He would never say it. And then you hear, no, there's no way. I think maybe one person knows, and that's Lane, and maybe he may not even know.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, that's good. There's no question that they will reach out to him.
Right. Oh yeah. And I mean, the house is true. Somebody told me exactly where the house is going to be. They said, go look at it. It's the foundation is being poured for the house that he's building. And I guess his son is going to move from LA to Oxford High School and all those things. And all that can change. And someone asked me, well, how can I say that? Or Kiffin is next head coach. Like somebody said, they're going to call him. They're going to call him. I'm just looking at the big picture from what I saw. It would take, unless he just wants to be the head coach at Florida. Some guys just, that's what they want to do. They want to, one of these days I want to learn French and move to Paris for a couple years. And that's why I work for the company I work for now, because I might have the ability to go work in Paris one day. But that's all. But if that's all he wanted to do because of his love of Spurrier, and he wears a visor because of Spurrier, and he just got to do it, that would be the reason. But if you look at it person to person, place to place, there's just a lot to stay at Ole Miss, and I saw it firsthand, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to go, is I wanted to see, and hear from the people and those kind of things, and what you don't, and maybe this is, and I'm going to say this to Florida fans, and I can say this because even though I'm a member of the press, I'm also a member of the Gator Collective, and I mean the NIL, and participate and give. Every person I talk to at Ole Miss, I say, you in the collect? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Every single person. You didn't hear, I don't like NIL. I don't. Every person to a man and woman said, oh yeah, we big. Oh yeah, we love it. We into it. And it's those kind of things and that's just facts. I mean, those are things that has nothing to do with the opinions that we have as writers and sports people. Those are the actual facts. And I think that that's something that Florida fans are going to have to come to grips with. Now, when you talk about the James Franklins, the Lincoln Rileys. I think sometimes we give those people, and I use the analogy of, you know, Kelly Ray Finley, for instance. Well, I think it's very unfair to compare Kelly Ray Finley to Don Staley. That's an unfair, because nobody beats Don Staley. And it's the same thing with James Franklin. Very few people beat Ohio State and Michigan. So to judge somebody based on that solely, what I mean, I just think that that's one of those things where I think as a fan base as a whole, and once again, it's just my opinion. You guys can agree with me. There's going to be some disappointed people because outside of Lane Kiffin, and I guess my question, when you examine Lane Kiffin, isn't Lane Kiffin like 1-2 and something against, like he's got 1 or 2 wins against a top 10 team or something like that, or you guys would know. I
Mhm.
mean, it's
Yeah.
something. So, I mean, I guess my question is, so if we look at everybody's going to have a flaw,
Yeah.
and I guess the question is, what's going to be different?
I think the world has changed, though, Lauren, in the fact that, there's no more SEC West now. There's no more Nick Saban, right? And that's what was really holding Lane Kiffin back, right? So now you've got, a 12-team college football playoff, no divisions. You know what I mean? You don't have to play Alabama every year. You don't have to play LSU every year. So I think the path is a lot different at Ole Miss now than it was, just a year or two ago with this change. So I think that's interesting. I think Lane, realizes the ceiling at Ole Miss is different now than even it was a couple of years ago, where he could probably go out and, get into the college football playoff at Ole Miss, where it didn't seem as possible. Another name that was floated, Lauren, and it's kind of interesting the last week and a half, is Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously is, had some success at Texas Tech. Didn't really have a great college record at Texas Tech, and then of course went to Arizona. But doing pretty well as the Commanders' offensive coordinator, working with Jaden Daniels.
Had a big night last night, yeah.
So and an innovative offensive mind, obviously came up through Mike Leach and so forth, the late Mike Leach. So I mean, I wonder, would that be palatable to Gator fans?
Right.
I would say no. Unfortunately, they've got their sights set so high. I mean, as you said, Lauren, there's going to be disappointment because I have no clue. Nobody if Lane was going to take this if it when offered, but if he doesn't, okay, then who's next? Because that, as I said, the Lincoln Riley, the James Franklin, okay, that's a proven and once that's that top tier. And once you get past, because there's not a lot of big names anyway. Kirby's not going to come here.
Right.
So, and you run out of those big. I thought Ryan Day just on a whim that he just gets fed up and he loses to Michigan again this year, and he it's like what Dan Campbell in Detroit. He got doxxed and he had to move, even though he's great.
Right. Oh yeah.
But beyond that, then you got that second tier, and I think anybody in that group, the Kingsburys, the Lance Leopold, all these people going,
right.
This is what we got all excited about.
He was another one, right? Matt Campbell.
Who was that? Matt Campbell.
Yeah.
I'm against Matt Campbell because he went to Mount Union. That's Ohio Northern's rival.
Yeah,
that's my.
Billy Napier got on the mat beating Matt Campbell, actually.
Exactly.
At Iowa State. So
absolutely. And a couple of things I want to talk about. Another name, and David, you were part of that conversation. I think. I mean, you and I both were there talking to Jamie Chadwell that night at the Spurrier thing, and I mean, he spent 30, 40 minutes with us, and was as gracious. I mean, I think he'd be great. From a PR standpoint and the press conference, but I don't think it would go over well. I mean, I don't know. I would go over well with Lauren Meadows, Gator fan, but I'm not sure. Once again, like you said, we've done the household name. We need to do the big starstruck name, and I think that. But somebody put on there. This was a conversation about how Ole Miss is better than Florida in football. No. We should never be. That's the point. We should never be having a conversation about the fact that Ole Miss could be better than Florida in football. What we had a conversation about is the fact that in this changing landscape, Ole Miss is further along in the process, would you guys agree, than Florida is right now? When you talk about transfer portal, NIL, those kind of things. That's basically all we're saying in reference to whether Lane Kiffin would or would not come to Florida or leave Ole Miss as a whole.
If it
Not
came
just
down to
come
that, I
forward.
mean, you can just see, I
Yeah.
mean, just the numbers bear it out and who they got in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And where when you start talking NIL, there's still a lot of cloak and dagger. You never know, but obviously they had enough to reel in guys like Walter Nolan that everybody wanted, and of course then again they didn't have enough to keep Junkins there and not go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're impeccable and they just can write whatever check and buy anybody's, but they are. It's just that they seem to punch above their weight when it comes to NIL.
Right.
And Florida seems to punch below its weight.
And I think too, listen, Billy Napier's had a few missteps in his staff, but I do think the Florida administration has been somewhat slow to adapt to this new landscape, and I think that's borne out over time these last few years, and not saying they're not catching up, but I think that's been an issue too, as part of the reason why the football program is where it is right now.
All right. So I'm going to leave you guys with this, and we're going to finish up. But I want to ask you, and I want to thank you as well, because I respect you both for your professionalism as well as your respect for me as being somebody new in this space. But I really appreciate the opinions of you both, and really appreciate having you on. But I want to ask, give me a bye-week wish list, and give me, if you had 3 wishes for the bye week. And we'll end on that. What would your 3 wishes for the bye week be?
Let's see. Mine would be that as far as the Gator football, because I was going to say, well, my first one would be that the hurricane goes away, so Kevin can make it up to his
Right.
Braves,
Yeah.
We're series.
Rooting for Kevin for sure.
Yeah. I wish Billy would be less regimented and less structure, more open to change. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what kind of changes are going to work, but they need, but whatever they are trying now, a lot needs change. And even if it's a bad thing, how hours can you do if you do something crazy that has to be open to change? I'd like to see people get off Montrell Johnson's back, because I don't think he deserves any grief like that. And it has nothing to do with it. But Kevin and I were there today. I'd like to see people, look at basketball team open practice today. That's something to get excited about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Legit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although they did say, and this will sound familiar to Florida fans, they're worried about their defense.
With all them trees,
they're going to work on their defense.
Really?
We got to see the 7'9" kid Oliver Reed, but barely leaving the ground.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because he doesn't have to.
Yeah, he doesn't have to. So your wish list, Mr. Brockway.
My wish list. I wish that Florida could tackle a little better. Right. I think that's first and foremost. Let's see a little physicality on defense, and wish for good health and happiness. But also, I guess as far as the Gators are concerned, I do like this system with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway, and you kind of wish for the offense to kind of turn a corner, and for maybe this offensive line to gel a little bit too. And if that could happen, maybe it could be an interesting October. Tennessee went on the road and they beat Oklahoma, but I'm not necessarily, they didn't look overwhelming in doing it. And, Jackson Arnold certainly struggled. Look, that's a tough environment to play in. But I think if Billy Napier has any hope of saving his job, he's going to have to sweep October basically. And can that happen? There's a minuscule chance. And I think, asking for an upset in Rocky Top is a tough ask, but I think UCF and Kentucky still could be winnable at home at the Swamp if you come out with the right mindset and make some growth during the bye week.
Yeah, and another point, Harold Perkins being injured for the rest of the year. I mean, LSU could maybe at home,
Yeah.
maybe. So, but guys, I want to thank you. We're going to say goodnight and really appreciate you being on. And we thank our viewers for being on as well. And before we go, we want to mention Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers for the questions of the day. Rinstar Medical Research. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, thank you.
Hola.